All right, good afternoon, everybody. Craig Setzer here on a Tuesday in early November, and we are talking about a potential hurricane event for Florida. A very late season, a very unusual event. Phil Klotspot, if you follow him on Twitter, he is the hurricane history guru. And of course, if this does happen to make landfall as a hurricane, he'll have all kinds of stats on that. But let's get right to it. First off, though, of course, if you like the videos, be sure to click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notifications, because that helps elevate it along the platform there. So let's get right to it. I don't want to waste any time because we're waiting on the 4 o'clock advisory to come in. I don't know that it's going to be that significant. Of course, at 11 p.m. last night, we had the hurricane warnings go up, as well as the tropical storm warnings for Broward, and I'm going to go over that real quickly in just a second as we are waiting on the 4 o'clock advisory to come in. But let's talk about what I always like to talk about right off the bat is who is threatened and who is not. If you're in the blue area, there is no need to think about or prepare for a hurricane. If you're in the red area, you should be kind of wrapping up your hurricane preparations. And I know we're still about 24 hours or 36 hours or so away from a hurricane event, which is expected to be Wednesday night in Florida. But I think during the day tomorrow, the wind's going to be blowing pretty good, and we're going to start seeing rain squalls coming in. So if by any means you're in the red area there and you can wrap up your hurricane plans this evening by sunset, by all means, please try to do so, because you don't ever want to be behind the curve on a hurricane event. You don't ever want to treat a hurricane event like an urgent situation. You want to make step by step to get it done, and that's kind of the way that we do hurricanes. They're never a rush to completion unless you have fallen behind the curve, or unless, let's hope, you haven't been surprised. We've been talking about this. I think I started talking about it on Saturday, maybe it was Friday, but Saturday, and kind of getting everybody in that mindset that we could be dealing with a hurricane, and in fact, that's the case. Now, I am located in Broward County, and that's significant because a lot of my references, whether consciously or not, refer to South Florida being Broward and Miami-Dade. That's why I worked on TV for 22 years, so I just tend to say that right away, Broward and Miami-Dade. And in fact, let me just do one thing here, a little bit of housekeeping here, because I want to get that crawl off the screen. That was the 1 o'clock intermediate advisory, and let's get that off of there so we're kind of positioned where we're ready for the new advisory to come in. So when I talk about South Florida, I'm thinking Miami-Dade and Broward. Now, of course, Palm Beach County, you folks think of yourself in South Florida as well, and then on up through Palm Beach, up the East Coast, we think of the Treasure Coast as well as the Space Coast. Basically, from Palm Beach north, that's where the hurricane threat is the highest. In Broward, there's a hurricane watch in effect, and in fact, let me just go to that because this is an important graphic to get out of the way. The current standing on the watches there and the warnings. So once again, in Broward here, we are looking at the hurricane watch, but the tropical storm warning. Miami-Dade, it's a tropical storm watch. Remember, a watch means conditions are possible. Warning means conditions are expected. And basically, coastal Palm Beach County all the way up to Flagler Beach, about that area, and then inland sections of Martin, St. Lucie, as well as Indian River and Volusia under the hurricane warning, meaning that hurricane conditions are expected. Much of the central part of the peninsula, as well as the west coast, is under a tropical storm watch. When the storm comes ashore, if it's a hurricane, it's going to start weakening as soon as it makes landfall, expected tomorrow night. And once that happens is then our hurricane winds and our tropical storm winds will come down gradually as it crosses the state. The expectation right now is not for hurricane conditions crossing the state. Most likely we'll have tropical storm conditions into central Florida, and then over on the west coast, tropical storm conditions as well, but gradually coming down. So that's the hurricane warning area. In terms of the storm surge, what do we do with storm surge? We flee the water. So if you're in the storm surge warning area, which basically is coastal Palm Beach all the way up to southeast parts of Georgia, you need to know if you're in an evacuation zone, and that means that if you know that you are in one, then you have a plan for if an evacuation order is given, you get out of the evacuation zone. You don't have to flee the state. You just get out of the evacuation zone because You just want to get out of where that storm surge is. And unfortunately, terrible event with Ian on the southwest coast, indicating just how deadly and how powerful storm surge can be. I don't think it's going to be quite as severe, but it only takes about 2 to 3 feet of water to be treacherous and to cause loss of life. So that's where that storm surge warning area is, basically 2 to 4 and even higher amounts. You can see that threat of rising water goes all the way up into the southeast coast there of the U.S., where the values are up to, in some cases, potentially 8 feet. Now that's the water rise. When we talk about storm surge, we talk about what's called inundation. Inundation is where the water goes and how deep it is over normally dry land. And it's right along those areas that typically flood during storm surge events. So I think St. Augustine, of course, Mayport, as well as parts of Jacksonville that flooded in Irma, flooded in Ian, as well as the St. Johns River. All those areas have the potential to flood, unfortunately, once again. All right, so let's get back to our graphics here and kind of move along here before the new advisory comes in. And once again, once it comes in, we'll jump right to it. So Nicole has gotten much better organized during the day today and has now taken on what we would think of as tropical characteristics. And as of 11 a.m. this morning, was kind of transitioned from a subtropical storm to a tropical storm. And you can see there, it's getting that round kind of ball of thunderstorms rotating around the center there. And it's in a relatively low shear environment. So it, for all intents and purposes, is now in a position where it can strengthen. There is still dry air on the periphery that it's going to fight with a little bit. Some of the evidence of that is that some of these little cloud bands here that are showing up underneath, outside of the overcast canopy here, they are tending to want to race away. That's typically a sign of dry air still working into the system. That being said, because the shear is relatively low here, as this continues to move off to the west-southwest here, it does have that opportunity to strengthen. The water's warm enough. I hear a lot of folks saying the water's warmer than normal. It just matters if the water's warm enough to support an intensifying hurricane. Warmer than normal is relative. What we care about here is it warm enough to support an intensifying hurricane? And in fact, it is. See all of these bands here? These are the showers that are starting to work their way to the west. These are going to start arriving tonight and tomorrow. That's why I say that if you're in this hurricane warning area, you need to get things done by sunset this evening. You don't want to wait till tomorrow because a lot of this is going to be coming in, as well as strong winds. By the way, you'll hear these little chimes in the background. That is a earthquake alert for for part of India or north of India there. So we don't care about that. Let's move along here and talk about the infrared loop. There you can see what's going on with that and the little ball of thunderstorms. A couple of things we'll be watching for. Are the thunderstorms persistent throughout much of the day? They have been persistent. Are they wrapping around the center? You can see there's an indication of that they're trying to wrap around and close off a center. There's no eye yet showing up, but as we go along here, we can't rule out that maybe an eye or an eye-like feature will try to form there as it moves to the west. Typically, eyes are associated with hurricanes and kind of a representation or an indication in the satellite that we have a hurricane intensity. Now, there are no hurricane hunters out there now. They're going to be going on later this afternoon, so we'll be kind of monitoring it as it goes here. And the water vapor loop, and here's the track, and this, of course, kind of, I think, caught everybody's attention. This was in the forecast, but it happened pretty quickly. First off, there was kind of this little jog there to the north, so that tended to move the tracks a little bit to the north, but there has been now a pretty quick turn back to the southwest there. And that quick turn to the southwest there, as I said a couple of days ago, is that everybody now in southeast Florida goes, oh no, it's heading right toward us. And so folks in southeast Florida, specifically Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, and Broward are like, how far south is it going to go? How close is it going to get? Of course, the folks up the coast that are in the hurricane warning, they're seeing that and they're saying, well, what does that mean for our specific impacts where the weather is going to be the worst? And it's too early to tell on that, but all of these kind of moves along here are things we're going to be watching. Let me zoom out here because we can also see some other things going on in the water vapor loop here. So first off, the high pressure areas in the atmosphere don't show up real well. They're indicated by the data, but they don't show up quite as well. But there is the high right there, and very subtly you can see that in motion. This is the blocking high. This is what's turning Nicole to the southwest there. That blocking high is going to stick around until this big dip out here comes along and basically crushes it. So the steering winds right now, which are from the northeast to southwest over Nicole, those are going to suddenly weaken very quickly, and then this flow here, that southwesterly flow, and the wind shear are going to take over, and that is what is going to drive Nicole to the northeast. How far west does Nicole get? Those are all the kind of the questions here. How far southwest does Nicole get until that influence stops? A question a little bit earlier was, well, if Nicole is stronger, does that mean that it might not go as far southwest? So that really doesn't show up, at least in these initial kind of model, or not model, but observational data. This is for a weak system here. There's Nicole right there. Here is the blocking high in the low levels of the atmosphere. So a weak system is really going to feel that southwest influence. Now, it's not going to go, this is a snapshot. It's not going to go all the way, like it looks like there, you think it's going to the Keys. That's not going to happen, because this is evolving over time. This is changing. This is just a snapshot from this morning. So that's if a weak system. Those are what we call the shallow, deep, mean layer steering winds. So a shallow system responds to that. What if it's stronger? Those are the deeper, deep, mean layer steering winds. These are basically the winds where, if the storm was very deep in the atmosphere and very strong, are going to influence it. And you can see there is still that suggestion that there is a southwest pressure on the environment right around Florida for the time being. Once again, these things are going to change, because as that trough comes in there, it's going to crush this, and then this high out here is going to try to take over, and that's what's going to turn it to the northwest, as well as those southwest steering winds there. So lots of things going on there, but all things that we kind of, and if you've watched before, we talk about, we do all these things and kind of just take them one step at a time, put them in our kind of our thinking cap here, and see how we put it all together. Let me go quickly into what we're seeing in terms of the hurricane hunters from earlier today, and one of the things that they were finding is that the winds, and remember yesterday we talked about this, the strongest winds were about 110, 120 miles from the center. They have been contracting. Those stronger winds are gradually working their way into the center, and I didn't see the last observation, but I wanted to say it was around 40 miles out from the center. Now that's more of like what we think of as a tropical system, where tropical systems have their strongest winds near the center. Non-tropical or subtropical systems have their strongest winds away from the center. So now the storm, as the pressure is falling, is contracting there, and those stronger winds are coming to the center. There is still a huge area of strong winds up here. Look at some of these observations. That's northeast at 30 right there. There's northeast at 25. It's blowing pretty good out here from the northeast. That fetch there, the winds blowing over water for a long distance there, that is really helping to build the surf and pile up the waves. And there's going to be tremendous coastal impacts here just from the waves and the water piling up from those big waves that are going to continue to build as we go forward into time here. All right, let's jump back here, and I want to get to kind of another thing we're watching here. These are the tropical storm wind gusts, and this kind of is basically apart from where that hurricane core is here, and we use this to kind of say, what are the conditions like for putting up shutters? And you can see just about to the coast there, we're seeing those gusts of 40 miles an hour. As we go through the evening hours here, there's 7 p.m. tonight, so a big swath here of northeasterly winds all throughout the southeast U.S. Blowing. And so areas along the coast here that if you have to put up hanging shutters, be very careful. In events like this where the weather is bad before the storm, a lot of times we get these situations where people get injured before the hurricane even gets there. We don't want that to happen. So be very careful if you have hanging shutters. If you have the accordion style shutters, definitely for the hurricane warning area. And I don't even think it's a bad idea in northern Palm Beach County to put them up. Southern Palm Beach County, it's a little bit more of an iffy situation there. If you feel more comfortable putting them up, that's fine. Broward still, because we're not under a hurricane warning, we're kind of running out of time here. The Broward situation is still kind of iffy. I think when we get the new advisory in at 4 o'clock, we can kind of make a better call on that, but my sense is that in Broward, it's still kind of a close call there. Let's talk briefly about the models here, because this is going to kind of help give us a clue on what's expected as we go forward here. So the models all pretty much capture the southwest motion, some more than others. This yellow model here is the CTCX. It's a Navy model. It's done very, very well this season. This is the HMON model here. It has a very funny, odd-looking representation of the storm, so that's probably going to be discounted a little bit. You can see a gradual turn here. Some of the models turn a little sooner than others. Some of the models a little bit later. The H-Wharf turns sooner. The H-Wharf turns out here east of the Abacos, so it's kind of trending off there more to the northwest. The European model and the UK model are a little bit farther to the south here, as well as the US models here, the GFS. So the consensus here, the TVCN, is kind of being pulled a little bit to the north. That's that white model. I know it's kind of buried here. Okay, so here comes the advisory. You can just see the track shift right there on the screen, a little bit to the south on that forecast point. So let's go ahead and get to the new advisory. Let me make sure that it has populated, and then we will go ahead and put it up. All right, so here it is, hopefully faster than any TV station has gotten it on. Let's first off talk about the new watches or warnings that have come out. And now you're going to see the crawl pop up on the bottom of the screen, because that's what we call the public bulletin right there. And then it's got the location that pops up on the screen as well. 285 miles to the northeast of the northwestern Bahamas. The headline, as you can read on the bottom of the screen, Nicole intensifying and expected to become a hurricane on Wednesday. New tropical storm and storm surge watches issued. So the new storm surge watch is basically Savannah River. So it's Georgia and South Carolina, and also Swanee River for storm surge watch, and the Panhandle area, the Big Bend area of the eastern northeast Gulf of Mexico. So the Panhandle area of Florida under a storm surge watch now. A tropical storm watch has also been issued from up Georgia on up to South Carolina. So those are the new watches and warnings. No changes to the current watches or warnings here in South Florida. We still have nothing in the Keys in terms of watches or warnings. We have the tropical storm watch for Miami-Dade. We have the tropical storm warning and hurricane watch for Broward. Remember, the watch means conditions are possible. The warning means they're expected. So in Broward, the expectation is for tropical storm conditions, but the possibility of hurricane conditions. In Palm Beach County, we have the hurricane warning. That extends all the way up through Volusia County, and I believe Flagler County as well. Basically, all the way up through the Space Coast there. And so that is the hurricane warning area, and that extends inland, especially west of Volusia, Indian River, as well as St. Martin and Martin and St. Lucie, not St. Martin. And then we have the tropical storm watches on the west coast, so no changes there. Let's go ahead and look at the advisory here and talk about what's going on. So winds at 65 miles an hour. That's an increase in wind speed. I'm going to talk in detail coming up here, because this is going to be one of the things we're going to be able to do if you're following along from home. It's this value here. That's called the latitude. That's basically the north or south position on the map there. As this number is decreasing, that means that Nicole is coming more southward. It's still going west, of course, but it's got what we call a southward component. You know what? let me pick a little different arrow here to kind of better represent that southwest component. There we go. So as that latitude number up there goes down, that means that the storm is making southward progress. It's not due south, and it's not due southwest, but it's not due west. Southward progress means that as we get over here along the Florida coast, it could end up a little bit farther to the south. One of the things we're going to be watching for. I'll go into detail on that in just a second here. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about this yellow area here. That, of course, is the extent of the tropical storm conditions. And then for those of you who have been with me for a while, you know what I'm about to say next about the cone, right? What am I about to say? And everybody said with me, does it matter if you're inside or outside of the cone? No, because guess what? if you're outside of the cone here, the tropical storm conditions extend well to the north and even to the south, and even the hurricane conditions look like they're starting to extend outside of the cone. As the storm gets closer, the cone gets smaller. Within about 4 or 5 day time frame, the cone is great for giving everybody a heads up about where the storm could be. But at less than 3 days, the storm is only tracking a point, and the cone rather is only tracking a point, and the storm is much bigger than a point. So there is our overnight position tonight right there. The forecast is for hurricane intensity by tomorrow afternoon. They're near the Abacos, and you can see the tropical storm conditions coming on shore, especially through east central Florida tomorrow afternoon. There is our next forecast point. This is tomorrow night. So closest approach there on the East Coast is tomorrow night. Unfortunately, it looks like a nighttime event. Nighttime events are never welcome, because it's that much scarier. It may not be that much worse, but it's that much scarier because now you're dealing with noises outside, and it's hard to see what those noises are. Also, when the power goes out at night, it's also scarier. So one of the things that we're going to be doing tomorrow afternoon, especially in the hurricane warning area, is pre-positioning flashlights. So we know if the power's out and we can't turn on our lights, where to find the flashlights. Okay, that's one thing, especially you folks in the hurricane warning area, get that done. Pre-position those flashlights. Let everybody in the family know. And if you've got kids, give them their own flashlights. Give them, a little sense of control, because these situations can really feel kind of scary, especially even for adults, but especially for younger folks. So there we are. This once again is tomorrow night there. Closest approach, you can see the tropical storm conditions just skirting Miami-Dade. Now, on the edge here of these tropical storm conditions, it's just probably going to be winds gusting above 40 miles an hour. But as we get closer to the hurricane conditions there, then the winds are more sustained 40, gusting to 60. And in this red area here, there's the likelihood, or at least a good possibility, that we've got the 70, 75 mile an hour sustained winds gusting to 90 or even higher if the storm is a bit stronger. All right, so that is the tomorrow night position. There's our next position. That is Thursday afternoon there. You can see this turn now continuing to take place. If the turn is a little bit slower or a little bit delayed, then the bad weather comes farther into southeast Florida, into Palm Beach County. In Broward, there's the potential for stronger tropical storm conditions based on this advisory if the track is a little bit farther to the south there. So all things we'll be watching. This does include tropical storm conditions over here on the west coast, something as well to consider there, as well as the Tampa Bay area. And you can see probably why we're seeing the tropical storm watch that goes up there in the storm surge watch rather up there in the Panhandle, as the winds are going to be really close to possibly a storm surge situation. Here we are, and look, all of this area outside of the cone here, Jacksonville and everybody outside of the cone, but you're going to see tropical storm conditions. So once again, the cone really doesn't help in that short time frame here. This is Thursday night into Friday, and then going on up. There we are Friday afternoon. Still the possibility of maybe some inland tropical storm conditions or tropical storm gusts. And then we could see coastal sections here, some skirting of tropical storm winds there, but not maybe necessarily a tropical storm. This is now a low pressure area that's getting kind of absorbed in the whole pattern there in the jet stream. So there's a kind of a big overview of the way it looks right now. Of course, the peninsula under the gun here, our friends in the Bahamas, especially the northwest Bahamas, under the gun here as the storm goes to the north. There's the latest watches, and you can see the tropical storm watch up the west coast there. This tropical storm watch will extend up the east coast. It hasn't updated yet. All these other watches and warnings are correct. The hurricane watch, tropical storm warning for Lake Okeechobee, hurricane watch, tropical storm warning for Broward, hurricane warning, Palm Beach north, all the way up to Flagler there, and then the hurricane warnings remain in effect for the Bahamas, and tropical storm watch for Miami-Dade, nothing for the Keys. There's the storm surge, which will update here, goes on up to the northwest, and you can see the storm surge watch there on the west coast. The storm surge warnings are there running up the east coast as well. So let's do a little timing thing here. Now, the wind arrows, I put these on here because a lot of folks want to know, if you're not going to be hit by like the center of the storm, what are the winds going to be like as the storm passes? These wind arrows are based on a model. They are not based on the National Hurricane Center advisory, but they're as close as I could find to be representative of the National Hurricane Center's advisory. So we're going to step by step through time here, and the direction is kind of the expected wind direction. Now, real close to where the center crosses, where the center of Nicole goes, those winds are going to be a little more unpredictable. So you can't really plan how things are going to go. This is really important for the folks on the West Coast that were hit by Ian, because where there's the potential for debris to blow around, you kind of want to know what direction the wind is blowing from to maybe help better secure that debris, or maybe reinforce that side of your roof for the tarp or things like that. So we're going to step forward through time here and kind of give you an idea of what's going on here. So here we go into 9 a.m. tomorrow. So you can see the winds becoming a little more northerly there along the East Coast. And unfortunately, I do not see the my icon here. Let me just do something real quickly here, because I don't see the icon. So this is, if I was still on TV, I could say let's take a 1 minute break and come back and try to fix this here, because I want to be able to see where my tropical icon is, and I think that is the. So now this is called true multitasking here, right? Forecast icon. Why aren't you showing up, forecast icon? I think I found the problem. All right, so let's do this. We'll just show it with the line there. Let me turn off the line. Let me turn off the there we go. So I think that's what I want. And I want the as we go here. As we go here. Well, you know what? I'm going to leave the line on because that'll kind of give us a sense of position there. So let's do that. Okay, so we're going to consider, as we go forward here, the center of the position is kind of the center of the storm based on the National Hurricane Center's track. Does that sound reasonable? That sound fair to everybody? All right, so let's get back to the graphic here, and I can get my arrow back up and kind of point as we go. So once again, this is our timeline here, and so here we are, 9 a.m. tomorrow. So the center of the storm expected to be right there, and the tropical storm conditions just now approaching the coast. Is this going to be like a wall of tropical storm winds? No. Typically, the winds are blowing and it just kind of gets gustier and it gets a little bit stronger, and the lulls aren't quite as low, and the top end of the gusts, they are higher. You can see the winds now have become northerly. They've gone from northeast to northerly. They're still northeast across northeast Florida, central Florida, and still north to northeast across southwest Florida. So this is 9 a.m. tomorrow. Here's noon tomorrow. Winds are beginning to what we call back, which means they're going from north to northwest a little bit there, and they're north to northeast still along the Treasure Coast and across much of central Florida there. Going forward here, one more time stamp, there's 3 p.m. and the tropical storm conditions continue to work their way slowly inland. There's 6 p.m. and this is why I'm saying it's better to have things kind of wrapped up tonight in that hurricane warning zone by sunset, because if this speeds up at all, or if heavier squalls come in, then it's arriving a bit sooner. There we are at 9 p.m. and you can see the winds now in Miami-Dade and probably Broward becoming a little bit northwesterly as the center of circulation, which of course looks like that, is starting to turn those winds more northwesterly. Still northeasterly over here in central Florida, Orlando, as well as northeast Florida, and becoming a little more northwesterly there on the west coast as well. So there we are at midnight, and our winds now becoming more westerly here in South Florida in response to the circulation being to our north, and still northeasterly and northerly there down along the East Coast. There we are at 3 a.m. Now, technically, the wind in right there in the Treasure Coast here is going to be turning very, very quickly. Our winds have become southwesterly in South Florida. They're still north and northwesterly along the West Coast, and they're becoming more northeasterly to the north of the circulation there. There is 6 a.m. and the winds have responded pretty well here. Our St. Lucie indicator is now more of a southerly wind. Remember, if you're kind of in that hurricane warning area, you basically have to prepare for just about all kinds of wind directions. There's the northwest wind on the west coast, southwest wind now in Miami-Dade and Broward, and northeast wind is increasing north of the center there. That's 6 a.m. on Thursday morning. And then there's 9 a.m. Now the winds in Orlando are more easterly. They're southeasterly or southerly and Treasure Coast, southwesterly. Fort Myers area, they're westerly. And the winds now are probably at their strongest on the southwest coast here late Wednesday night into Thursday morning, and northwesterly there in the Tampa area. And you can see the tropical storm conditions the whole time have just been skirting Miami-Dade. So remember, in Miami-Dade, we're going to think our winds will be gusting above 40. In Broward, probably gusting above 50, maybe as high as 60. And that causes like some spotty power outages here or there. In Palm Beach County, they're going to be stronger, probably in the 50, gusting to 70. If the track is any farther south, they're going to be even stronger than that. And then Martin, St. Lucie, on up to Volusia and Indian River counties, they're going to probably be 70, potentially gusting to 90. This will be the area where we have the more widespread power outages, probably temporary in duration, maybe 1 or 2 days. I think of temporary as 1 or 2 days in a hurricane situation, maybe even less than 24 hours. I think of long duration as when you're dealing with power outages for a week, for three days or more, let's put it that way. So that's 9 a.m. on Thursday. There we are on noon on Thursday, 9 a.m. Thursday, noon on Thursday. And you can see our winds continuing to kind of make that circulation circle around there, and the tropical storm conditions spreading into the Panhandle and now beginning to recede from South Florida there. And then there we are, 3 p.m. Weather improving now in the hurricane hit area, and at its worst over there on the west coast, especially north central Florida, Gainesville, Ocala, as well as into the Panhandle there. And then there's 6 p.m., 8 p.m., and then you can see now by midnight Thursday night beginning to recede out of Florida there. So that's kind of a lot with what's going on there. This kind of, I think, is all kind of a deeper dive here. We're doing talking about lots of stuff here. I do want to show you one of the things that I was talking about. Let me put the advisory up here again for just a second, because I was mentioning that latitude number, and then I'm going to take a break and we'll go over some questions. So the latitude number is this up here, that 27.5. At its highest, it was 27.8. At 1 p.m., it was 27.6. It's now 27.5. About every 1/10 of a degree there, that is about a 6-mile difference to the south. Okay, so those aren't those little numbers there. They're not big distances, but they are changes. So we're at 27.5. So why do we care about 27.5? Because along the east coast of Florida, we are on what we think of as latitude and longitude lines. This one line going north-south here, that is 80 degrees west. So that's our longitude. But, oh my gosh, did I just clear all that out? Let me see if I can get that back here. I didn't want to do that. There we go. Okay. So, so these lines that run east-west here, those are our latitude lines. That's 25. There's 26, which is almost the Miami-Dade Broward line. There's 27, which is almost the Palm Beach Martin line. And then 28 is just south of, just north of Sebastian Inlet there. So 27.5 right now means that the storm is on this latitude right about there. As it continues to come to the southwest, which it's forecast to do, that number, as it goes more and more to the south, ends up farther to the south and farther to the south. For those of us in Miami-Dade and Broward, we really don't want to see it drop much below about 26.8, 26.6. Now, of course, there's that possibility that it's going to make a curve back to the northwest there before it even gets to the coast. It may do one of these where it does get around 26.5 and then turns back to the northwest. That's certainly in the forecast. But kind of with an intensifying system that's moving south of west, it always makes me a little bit nervous, because what happens is that sometimes those intensifying systems that are moving to the southwest tend to go a little bit farther southwest than you wanted. So we're going to be tracking that very closely. So in Miami-Dade and Broward, 26.5, which is right up here, because that still keeps the core north of us. Now, down here, Miami-Dade and Broward, we're thinking, oh, we don't want it to come here. Of course, the folks north of us, Palm Beach, Martin, St. Lucie, Indian River, and Volusia, are saying, where is the worst going to be? Because basically the storm is going to come to that area. So all of these motions here, especially on Wednesday, we'll be watching that latitude to see how far to the south that number gets. All right, let's move. I want to just zoom out here real quickly there. This is why you want to have everything wrapped up this evening. Look at that. There are all the squalls. The rain is beginning to increase now. So sunset tonight, guys. Sunset tonight, because these squalls are going to contain some stronger wind. Also, this was the earlier advisory. There, that line right there, that was the advisory from 10 a.m., and that was the 24-hour forecast. Here's the new 12-hour forecast. So it's just a little bit south, just a smidge south of that earlier track. All right, I have done a lot of talking here. I'm sure there are questions. So let me just leave the radar up there, and let me go back here and see if we can answer a few questions and kind of keep everybody on the same page and try to keep everybody calm. Now I'm gonna work my way back here, and I think I've covered a lot of this, so I'll just say we covered that. And then if you didn't get your question answered in the chat, and I said we covered it, then I'm not gonna rehash it. But it's in the video, so you can go back and find it in the video, hopefully. So yeah, the H-Wharf is going pretty low. The H-Wharf is also going pretty far to the north. Now the HAFS model, which did pretty well close to landfall with Ian, is also going pretty far to pretty strong intensity-wise. Let me show that real quickly here because I think that's important to kind of point out. Let me get this. We'll go through the models real quickly here. We'll consider this kind of our deeper dive segment. So this is the GFS, and this is starting tomorrow morning and going through Thursday evening. And so you can see the center there, and it kind of moves west-northwest and crosses the coast there north of Palm Beach County, and then still has a pretty strong circulation as it gets over there in the northeast Gulf of Mexico. But you can see in the pressure down there around 982. So remember pressure we use to kind of roughly correspond to the wind speed. And once we get, I think, below 9, then the 980 range, well, let's say 985 as just a rough guess here. Once we're in the 985, we're a really strong tropical storm. Once we're in the 980 range, we're hurricane intensity. So here is the H-Wharf, which kind of turns a little bit earlier and is going back to the northwest there, right up close to the Cape there, to Kennedy Space Center. So that's one of our northern tracks there, and you can see the pressure pretty low there. That's that little number in the middle, 971, 967, and it kind of bottoms out there. Looks like 965, the lowest. So that would be well into Category 1 hurricane there, and that's kind of the representation of the way it looks in the H-Wharf. So the H-Wharf is north, so folks in the hurricane warning area, take heed, and folks north of the hurricane warning area, take heed as well, because any deviations north would certainly impact you. Basically, the hurricane warning area, you should be preparing. So here is the HAFS model. This is going to be the new hurricane model that's adopted by the National Weather Service, and it is south of the Cape there. So it's kind of up by Port St. Lucie for where the center crosses the coast, but it's also pretty strong. So 983 on the pressure there. Remember, this is tomorrow morning. 974. I think the lowest is about 967. So certainly a hurricane there. Now what we're going to be watching here is that how tight that core gets. Are the winds going to continue to contract? Are they going to get into this like 20-mile range or 15-mile range? The reason that would be concerning is because if we get into that tight radius of maximum winds, kind of that tighter eye wall there, then we have that in the potential for more quick intensity changes going up or going down. So that's certainly something we're going to be watching as well. All right, so let me get back to the radar there while we're talking, because that's kind of live what's going on there right now. Right, so the moisture levels are already high in the ground. In central and north Florida, that's very true. And this additional rainfall is going to be a big problem for storm surge flooding. Yep, folks preparing in central Florida as well, Orlando area. High pressure areas pushing it to the southwest. That's true. We went over that. You're welcome for the updates. Thanks for watching. It didn't really turn southwest earlier than expected. I think it turned southwest a little sharper than expected. I was thinking it was going to kind of, gradually go over there. Instead, it kind of just boom. Okay, now we're moving southwest. That happened pretty quickly. Miami-Dade is not under a tropical storm warning. Miami-Dade is under a tropical storm watch. Remember, tropical storm watch means tropical storm conditions are possible. Warning means they're expected. No, do not start now. I don't want to do a Windows update. That would really be bad, right? I need to move along here quickly. My computer's telling me a Windows update. So guess what, guys? If this ends all of a sudden, you will know why it ended. You know what? Maybe I can shut that off. No, don't do a Windows update right now. Hello, this is not what we want to have happen right now. Schedule the restart. Oh, boy. What do we call this? Live TV or just live streaming here? Schedule the restart. I want it to be, 11 p.m. tonight. That's fine with me. Thank you. Do that. So, okay. Looks like we're still on the air. The movement says west instead of southwest because the Hurricane Center does gradual kind of average changes to the movement there, because that tends to dampen out any like quick little jogs here or there. So they take like an overall average motion. We saw that with Ian. They kept saying north, and it was clear it was moving kind of northeast. So that's one of the things there that shows up. In fact, what I'm going to do for our next update is I'm going to put the degrees, the directions heading there, because sometimes those little differences in degrees, and let me see what they said here for this advisory. So they said the direction was 260. So that's just a little bit south of due west. So I'll fix that for our next update. Let's see. Do I use a crystal ball in my forecast? No, I stopped using a crystal ball many years ago. Let's see what else here. Right, so the National Hurricane Center publishes the internal wind speed probabilities. If you go to their page, you can actually find the table. In fact, I've got it here. Let me punch it up just so you guys can see what it looks like real quickly here. So it looks like that, and all the numbers kind of are there for a lot of locations. And those columns in the parentheses are what we call the cumulative values, and then you can see the hurricane values and the tropical storm values. So a lot of information there if you want to know exactly what your probability of tropical storm or hurricane conditions is for your location. Let's see. Nepal on the earthquake, yeah. Any more questions here? TVCN, yeah. So the TVCN, as I said, was kind of influenced by the H-Wharf, which has kind of gone to the north. That's one of the members that goes into the TVCN. Remember, the TVCN didn't work that well for Ian because the GFS and the H-Wharf and the H-Mon, all those that go into the TVCN, which is a consensus. It's like a bunch of models put into one, so it's not a true model. The TVCN was kept being pulled to the west, which gave that impression that it looked like the storm was going to stay west of Fort Myers, while some of the other models, the UK and the European, were more to the east, but the TVCN had some bad apples in it. Let's see, what else do we have here? So if the cone shifts further, do we think hurricane watches will be upgraded to warnings? So, the Hurricane Center is kind of smart in the way that they have done their watch and warning situation here. And let me go back to that real quickly here to kind of talk about that. So that's the watches and the warnings there. And kind of on the edges of where the warnings are, there are watches. So on the edge of the hurricane warning in Palm Beach County, there's a hurricane watch in Broward. And on the edge of the tropical storm warning in Broward, there's a tropical storm watch in Miami-Dade. So, I mean, this is the way you got to cover it, is, consider that possibility. So we're going to put that watch there, kind of bounding the edges of the warning there. That was another thing that popped up there, and just so you guys know, it's just a marine weather statement there going on there. So that's with the watches. Tropical storm watch for the Keys. Nope, I think the Keys are looking pretty good in this whole situation. In fact, when I showed that timeline thing there, the ETA, what you could see was that the Keys really don't get in the tropical storm conditions. Let's see what else is going on here. My timeline kind of jumped here. Uh, so, looking here. And I think that's Southern Volusia, folks in Southern Volusia. I think you guys need to really prepare for, the real deal here, hurricane, because the north end of this, remember, it's going to be kind of lopsided, and the north side of the storm here is going to have much stronger winds as opposed to the south side. Let's see. Anything else? Shutter, no shutter in Palm Beach County. So, in northern Palm Beach County, if you can do it pretty easily, I would do it. In southern Palm Beach County, it's kind of iffy. If you can do it easily and you feel more comfortable, then I would do it, and I would especially do the north-facing windows or the maybe the west-facing windows, if that makes sense. So if your house faces like northeast and northwest, I would cover those windows if you can do it easily. Now, in terms of putting up panel shutters in Palm Beach County, if it's not that hard to do, and maybe some of the former specialists at the Hurricane Center that I would talk to, they would shutter sides of their houses just based on the wind direction. I showed you that wind direction graph there. So let's see what else here. Yeah, so and the thinking is, of course, in the hurricane warning area, you always prepare for a category stronger. If it does get stronger, I think it'll be smaller in terms of that core of the storm. So that's kind of one of those bad news, good news situations. You're like, oh, great. Not as many people will get hit, but those who do get hit much, much worse. Let's see. So that's basically it. The strength intensity right now, once again, in the forecast is for category 1. But of course, we want to plan for a category higher. Let's go through one more time, just real quickly here, and then I'm going to wrap things up because we've been going we haven't been going that long compared to some of them. All right, so once again, here's the advisory. Now, the yellow area, of course, tracks where the tropical storm conditions are, and it never is like all of a sudden when this yellow area gets here, we're just in tropical storm conditions. We can start getting into the real tropical storm wind gust, and as you get closer to the center, that's where the conditions become more sustained. The red area there indicates the hurricane conditions. This is the 1 p.m. tomorrow afternoon position here, and the tropical storm conditions are beginning to arrive on the Florida East Coast there. There we are tomorrow night. There's the landfall position approximately in this area here along the Treasure Coast, but the stronger winds are going to extend on the north side of it, so on up into the Space Coast there. The forecast is category 1, so probably reaching the coast there during the night. Now, I'm always cautious about talking about landfall. Landfall is kind of more of a meteorological term to me because the storm is going to be hitting the coast well before that center point makes landfall. So, you'll see a lot of reporters sometimes that especially don't deal with hurricanes will say, the storm is expected to make landfall by 4 a.m. or whatever. Well, the folks hours and hours before the storm makes, quote, landfall are dealing with a hurricane. So landfall to me is just a meteorology term, and that's why I use landfall very cautiously and not to talk about when the bad weather is going to be there. Landfall is just a meteorology point. There we go forward. So now you can see there the Keys, not in the tropical storm conditions, Miami-Dade and Broward. Miami-Dade rather on the edge, so winds gusting above 40 miles an hour. Broward more into it there. Winds probably 40, gusting to 50 or 60. Palm Beach even more into it. And you can see there, it doesn't take much if the next forecast comes in a little bit farther south, or if it doesn't make this turn quite as soon as expected. So let's say it gets down here to Marsh Harbor. That's tomorrow afternoon. And then it just decides to go more to the west for a while. Now all of a sudden, we've got hurricane conditions into Palm Beach County, especially northern Palm Beach County. So we're kind of getting close to the dicey part of the storm here of little movements in your area are going to make a big difference, and that doesn't even count for wobbles there. Wobbles, maybe a little wobble to the left, which would be to the south, all things we're going to be watching. In fact, I'm going to be doing lots of updates tomorrow afternoon. May just stay on continuous stream there, and you can just hop on, and then I'll break in from time to time and give updates as they become available. So so that's tomorrow night, Thursday afternoon, and then on up there Thursday night, and then finally there we're zipping on up to the northeast, kind of as a system there. So schools, I really just, I'm not going to answer the schools because they have to deal with other things. The icon, oh boy, you want to hit a trigger word with me. So let me cover the icon briefly, because I know a lot of folks like to talk about the icon. I talked to the developers in Germany about the icon because it looks like a promising model. But the issue with the icon, let me get back to our radar here so we can kind of just keep an eye on the rain that's coming in. The thing about the icon is it may be a very good model, but the icon doesn't have stats to back it up. And so I want to look at a model like the GFS or the HAFS model or the HMON or the European or the UK that has stats that say it does very well in this situation, it doesn't do as well in this situation. And right now, Germany, that runs the icon model, is not doing stats. They asked me if I would like to help them create a stats program for it. It's what's called a hurricane tracker that would generate the stats. I said, talk to me in December after the hurricane season's over. So until we see stats, I just can't say, oh, the icon's doing this or the icon's doing that. The icon may be doing something, but does it normally do that? Does it have better skill in a situation where it's moving to the west? Does it have a better skill with a high pressure blocking ridge than it does with a trough that's turning it? We don't know. The icon appeared to anecdotally do well with Ian, but is it going to do well with this? We don't know. So I'm not saying that the icon model is a bad model. I'm just saying that we don't have the stats to say compare it like apples to apples with the other models. So that's my icon speech there. If it shifts to the south again, what do you expect for Broward and Palm Beach? Well, the weather's just going to get worse by say 20 miles an hour. So in Broward now we're expecting 40 with gusts to 60. Maybe it'll be 50 with gusts to 70 or 60 with gusts to 80. We can't rule out hurricane gusts in Broward, and the shutter question is always a tricky question because you don't want to get hurt putting the shutters up by all means. And the shutters really, I know a lot of people put the shutters up because they just make you feel better. And sometimes blocking out the wind and the rain and all that, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. But ideally we put up shutters for hurricane force winds because we want to protect our windows from getting broken. Because in hurricane force winds, and of course the definition of hurricane force winds are 75 mile an hour winds with higher gusts. In hurricane force winds, what happens is that when that wind pressure gets into the house, it can cause structural damage to the house. So in the hurricane zone, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, in the hurricane warning area, when the winds start to come up, hopefully you have your shutters up. And the more I think of it, in southern Palm Beach County, if you want to put them up, go ahead. And if you can get them up this evening, go ahead, because it's really going to be one of those that is that close. And it's kind of always better to have and not need than to need and not have. And remember, do it if you can do it without getting injured, or do it carefully by all means. So back to keeping the wind out. So in the hurricane warning areas, by tomorrow evening, when we're kind of in our shelter-in-place kind of position here as the storm is coming onshore and the worst of the weather is coming onshore, you're going to want to close all of the doors in your house, because should one window break and the wind gets in, structural engineers that do hurricane assessments, post-hurricane assessments, have found that keeping the wind out of the whole house is better. Even if you lose one window, it's better than letting the wind into the whole house. So in other words, if the wind gets into one room of your house, but not the rest of the house, that's better than letting the wind into your whole house because of the dynamic pressures that occur. And anyone that's been through a hurricane that goes over your house, you can tell the pressures that occur. You just have to look at the water level in your toilet, and you can see it's going up and down. There's some pretty good pressures acting on your house when you have a hurricane going over. What are the water temps it's going into? So the Eastern Gulf, the Northeast Gulf is relatively cool. You know, I'll put a water temp map together. The water temps where it's going over now support hurricane intensity. They don't, as we get closer to the coast here, they kind of drop off a little bit in terms of the depth. But this storm's going to be moving. A lot of times we talk about what's called upwelling, which is where a storm is moving slow and it pulls up cooler water from deeper layers. I don't think upwelling is going to be an issue here because the storm is going to keep moving along. In fact, let me while I'm sitting here and thinking about it, let me see if I can pull up real quickly a model that I look at that kind of gives what's going on inside of the storm with respect to its speed, its forward motion here. So let me get that real quickly here. So the speed of the storm is around, what we say, 10, 11 miles an hour right now. It's going to stay that way for the next 24 hours. And then, so through tomorrow afternoon and then tomorrow evening, it's going to begin to accelerate a bit. So the good thing is that it's not going to like stall over Florida. It's going to continue to move. And by Thursday afternoon, it's moving about 15 to 16 miles an hour. And you know what? Maybe I can punch this up. Let me try this. Fingers crossed. We'll see how that looks. Yeah, kind of. Okay, so this is what's called and you can't see the left there. Well, we'll just have to make do. So this is what's called the Storm Hurricane Intensity Prediction System. Statistical Hurricane Intensity Prediction System. SHIPS is what it's called. Statistical Hurricane Intensity Prediction System. And basically, get out of my way. As a storm gets closer, more and more little advisories come in. So the sea surface temperatures are this column right here, and 27.5 degrees. Typically anything above 26 supports hurricane intensity. The ocean heat content, anything above 0, supports hurricane intensity. So all these values support hurricane intensity. The maximum potential intensity here supports hurricane intensity. In fact, it supports category 2. So if there was nothing else going on and the storm was just floating along, it would be could be substantially stronger. There is the wind shear values up here. They are moderate to strong. So that's another thing there that potentially might limit the overall intensification there. Let's see what else we have here. So I went back and I showed the tropical storm winds reaching the edge of the tropical storm, winds reaching Miami late tomorrow. By the way, in Miami and South Florida, there is a flash flood watch. I don't know how much rain we're going to get here, but you would think on the south side we're probably not going to get as much as, of course, near the center and to the north. Flight delays, Miami-Dade and Broward, that's a little bit out of my lane, but probably not early in the day, maybe a little bit later in the day. Now, one of the things we have in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale and Miami International have east-west runways because predominantly the wind is from the east here. And so sometimes there might be a crosswind consideration where the wind is blowing exactly perpendicular to the runway. And we're going to have some of that here in South Florida. And it may exceed some of the aircraft. And of course, I'm not a pilot. I'm really out of my lane here. But it may exceed some of the planes' thresholds for being able to land in very strong crosswind situations. I think those values are pretty high, but that's just something here. So, as I should say, check with your local airline. All right, guys, I'm getting into the minutia here. We've been talking for an hour. So once again, let me just give everybody a reminder to please be sure to click the like button, subscribe, so you can find my channel more easily, and then also get the notifications And also, one of the things that didn't pop up there is be sure to share with your friends. If you think any of this has been helpful, be sure to share it with your friends so that we can help better inform people and hopefully, who knows, maybe even save a life or two. That would be like the ultimate goal there. So the next thing we'll do will be at 9:30 tonight. 9:30 tonight, and I'm not going to go much past 10. Once the advisory comes in, we'll be a little bit briefer there unless there are any big changes. And then tomorrow, I'll probably do the 4:30 a.m. thing once again that I did this morning. So that's where things stand. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we will see you again tonight at 9:30.